Easy now, folks. This is my 30cm cubed crown tail Betta tank, and I'm rather pleased with it. So we're going to go through how we put it together here. There's a separate video for how I painted the background. You're welcome to go and have a look at that. But otherwise, let's get into it, eh? So you already saw this is not going to be the final resting place for the tank. It's just a staging area for recording, but we're still going to lay down the foam mat to make sure the tank doesn't slide about, and also there's no grit or anything underneath that's going to cause a pressure crack once we put a bit of weight into it. And we're going to use sand in this build, so I've pre-rinsed a load of sand in this funky orange bucket I've got here. So that's the first thing that's going to go in. We normally aim for it being a bit deeper at the back than it is at the front. Once we're happy with that, we can add some of our equipment. I like these wee heaters here because they've got the guards built into them. So we'll get that in place where it's going to be. Then the next thing we can put in, because it's unlikely to move position, is the filter. Now I like these wee air filters here. They're a bit like sponge filters. The only difference being they actually collect the waste inside of them. So it's quite easy to remove waste from your tank just by pulling those out. I normally have one or two maturing in other tanks, which is where this one came from, so it's already cycled for us. Then I'm going to start adding some plants. This is dwarf chainsword. Now normally what I would say is mess about with your hardscape first, right? Put it in position, move it about, play with it until you're comfortable, but I already know I'm going to want these chainswords at the back of the tank here, so I'm going to get some of them in before I start doing that. For the hardscape then, we've got some of these beautiful sunstones. Really like these, they're awesome. Nice colours on them. We need to start getting them in roughly the position that we think we're going to want them. But this is where we have a bit of trial and error here, so we'll stick them in. Take a step back, have a wee look at different angles, see if we're quite happy. Keep an eye on your plants at this stage as well. If you feel like they're drying out a wee bit, give them a spray with a wee spray bottle full of water. There are some edges to these sunstones, but nothing so sharp as it's going to damage the Betta's fins or anything. It didn't really take me too long to nail it this time, but this can be one of the steps where you spend most of your time getting it right, because after this we're going to start adding some water, and we can still change it up at that point, but it's just far easier if we get it right now. Well, best we can anyway. Now we've done that, we can position our light. On a bigger tank you may have done that already, but because the gap is quite wee here, I didn't want to risk giving it a nasty knock with the rocks as we place them in and out. It starts to look so much better when we've got the light on, of course. The nice colours coming out of the rocks there. Look, even the plants look healthier and brighter. Kind of coming together how we want it a wee bit more now. Which means we can move on to the next step of adding some water. A few different ways of doing this. Some people put a plate in. Normally I've got a wee pot like this that's full of pebbles that I use because it helps to break up the water a wee bit. I couldn't find that just now. Anyway, we're going to keep filling it up until we've got a good few inches of water in the tank now. You find sometimes things start settling a wee bit, stones might shift a wee bit, and again it's about taking a step back, having a wee look and make sure everything's as you require it. Because that's the stage we're at now anyway. If we're pretty sure we're happy with our hardscape the way it is, we can start putting any plants in around it that we're going to use. This is just some more dwarf chainsword here. This is going to be the only plant that is secured in the substrate in this tank. But if we change angles to around the front here, as we put a few in, do you see those bubbles coming up there? Look. Now, we don't want that. We definitely don't want air pockets trapped under the sand. So the easiest thing to do is just get a chopstick, or in this case the planting tongs, and just move them all about the sand where you can. See right at the front of the glass there how much air is getting released. we need to go through all the sand that we can and do this on a regular basis. Gas pockets do build up over time in your sand and you want to release them, so whenever you're doing your maintenance they can do that. Or you can employ a wee troop of Malaysian trumpet snails, which I am going to put in this tank. They are so good for burrowing through the substrate and releasing those gases for you, aerating the substrate as they go. I wouldn't have a planted tank without them. We can bring our water level up a wee bit more now. Obviously, it's dechlorinated water that we're using. Because we're going to add another few bits here, first of which being a thermometer. Obviously we want to get our tank water to the right temperature, and then I've got this Anubias on a rhizome plant ledge. I have another couple of videos on these ledges and they are so awesome. I'm a big fan of them, but particularly for a Betta tank, because here's one here with moss on it, and I'm going to position that quite near the top of the tank. As you know, Bettas like to have a wee chill near the surface sometimes, and this gives them an opportunity to do that if you don't have a Betta hammock or anything like that. The other thing I'm adding just before we fill it up to the top is root tabs for the plants. I'm going to put a few of them here and there for the roots to start getting some fertilisation, give them a head start. Chain swords are predominantly root feeders, so obviously you'd follow the instructions on whatever your root tabs you're using to see how many you need and how far apart to space them. And after that we can bring our water up to the top. We're nearly there. I've always got cherry shrimp knocking about somewhere, so I'm going to add some to this tank. I find 50-50 with Bettas. Some get on really well with them, others tend to gobble them up quite quickly. But we'll give it a go. Hopefully these guys will get on with the Betta that's coming, who is jet black, so I figured the red cherry shrimp in the tank would look really cool with them. So we'll let them get in and have a wee explore about. Let them get comfy for a wee while. And then you've got to have a Marimo moss ball, haven't you, if you've got a Betta. Standard. Then I have this Salvinia here. Floating plant, a bit like duckweed. Bettas love floating plants. They like the cover and they like picking about in them. It's a wee bit bigger than duckweed though, and isn't such a pain to get rid of if you want to remove it after a while. Really pretty actually, this plant. I like it a lot. Next it's time to float the Betta in there. Start the acclimation process, equalise the temperatures first, and normally I put the lights out for this stage, but obviously with recording the video here I've left them on. Then when he's been in long enough and he's acclimated, we can net him out and let him into his new home to start exploring and having a wee look about. The final thing I like to add to a Betta tank is Indian almond leaves. I'll not go into it, we know how good they are. I do have a video on them if you're not too sure about them, but really beneficial for shrimp and Betta, so stick one of them in there. And that's us, that's our Betta tank build done. I've just noticed the heater's a bit wonky there. Look, I did move it out from the side of the tank just a wee bit because Bettas are curious wee things, and I wouldn't like him to get stuck between the glass and the heater. We're gonna need a name for this Betta actually. I'll keep coming back to Venom, but I feel like that's a bit obvious. Let's see when he does that, see when he flares like that. If you've seen Venom from Spider-Man, I think that's where I'm getting that from, but I don't know if that's just a wee bit too obvious, a wee bit So if you've got a suggestion, feel free to put in the comments below. I'm not guarantee I'll go with it, but I'm stuck otherwise. Aside for that, I hope you enjoyed the Betta build or found it useful maybe. As ever, if you've got any questions, I'll do my best to answer them, as will the rest of the community. Everybody's so great at helping each other out. One of the best things about this hobby, I find. Like to think it looks quite cool. I like it anyway, so now he's in, I'm out. Later, 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 later.